Yo, what up, guys? What up? What up? Hopefully, y'all guys doing good on this Thursday night of February 16th. So I'm doing good, guys. Like always, I really am always doing good, man. I know I always say it, but I am. I'm very thankful, man. I really am. Um, I feel my life is way tens of hundreds times better than what it was some years ago, and I'm thankful for that. So even when there are little bumps in the road or little things that don't go my way, um, it means nothing, man. Doesn't really affect me. Even for that moment, it may, maybe it brings me down for a second, dude. It's not even worth it, man. I'll shake it off, move on, thankful, and continue to go forward. But either way, guys, man, thanks for joining today's live stream. And we're going to be talking about a few things. Again, like always, we talk about Python stuff. We do talk as well about code reviews. So again, if you have code you want me to review, you have a problem with your code base, you have an issue, we could discuss it, be more than happy to review it. If you have any questions, anything related to AWS, we do a lot of that stuff here as well. So we could look into that as well, guys. But one of the things that I do want to talk to y'all about is going to be, is Windows ideal for programming? So, dude, why is my screen so bright? And why is nothing loading? What the hell is going on here, man? Okay, there we go. I don't know why, man. It's acting funky. All right, cool. Dude, I just saw a big old white screen. It's just so bright. But one of the things, guys, that I want to talk to you about is Windows bad for programming, right? It doesn't matter what you're programming, whether it be Python, JavaScript, C#. I mean, the list goes on. Java, Golang. Is it bad for programming? And I want to talk about that, guys, because one of the things that I hear often is, real programmers use Mac OS. And of course, you may hear a lot of people that work in FANG companies. That's what they mention, right? They use Mac, right? A MacBook Pro to be specific. And so now you have, again, a lot of FANG people using Mac OS. So now it kind of makes it seem like, I need a Mac OS to program. And that's not true at all, guys. Like, I'm going to say it again, at all. I'm not sure where that actually came from. I think it kind of comes from just trends, right? Like, this is, the MacBook Pro. It is a nice, slick laptop. I would say more on the high-end side for sure of laptops in general. But it's kind of, you know what it kind of reminds me of? It's kind of like saying, I need a sports car in order for me to get a point A and point B fast. But in the reality is that even if you get a sports car, you can't drive 100 plus miles an hour in the freeway, right? It just does not work that way. I mean, you can still go fast, go 80, 90, maybe 100 at best. But that's about it, man. You are limited to what you could do. And even if you don't have a sports car, let's say just have an average Toyota or something type car, Camry, dude, that's going to get you to point A to point B in pretty much almost the same manner, because there are speed limits and things of that nature, right? So the point I'm trying to make is this notion that, you got to have a MacBook Pro. And it's kind of stupid, because I do feel people that really believe that, like truly believe that, either A, they have never ever in their life coded outside of a MacBook Pro. And and that's fine, right? Like Mac OS has been out for so many years, so it's very easily a operating system that even people that are, let's say, in college today or just finished college and that are working, they most likely could have grown up with Mac OS at an early age and even to their whole life, pretty much, right? So if that's all you know and that's all you have worked with, and you're able to code and do whatever you're trying to solve, yeah, I get you may feel that way. But at the end of the day, though, you have to, somebody who, like me, in my case, I use, even today, I use all three operating systems. So right behind me in the back, I mean, kind of hard to tell. You kind of tell a little bit right in the corner, but nevertheless, this is a Mac OS that I'm running. That's what I use for work. Again, I do a lot of I'm a software developer, so of course I do a lot of coding over here as well and other stuff. But I do use Mac OS. Again, do I need Mac OS to code? No, I don't. But I can, and I do use it for that. Anybody who has watched my YouTube videos would know all of my examples that I do that are programming related, like Python, right? Because that's what I do. I do it in Windows, right? And I'm using Windows 10 to be exact. And so all of my coding that I do, it's in Windows, right? And also I have another machine over here on the side, and that machine I am running Linux, Pop OS to be exact. So I have three different operating systems: Pop OS for Linux, Mac OS behind me, and then of course where I do my YouTube videos, I use Windows. All three of those PCs I code on. All three of them. I have code on. I do code on different projects and so forth. And anybody who has done some DevOps or have experience in that area, you will know firsthand when you deploy code, it's not going to a Mac OS, operating system. It's going to Linux, man. That's where it's going to. It's going to get deployed in Linux. Now there are nuances, I would say, when you're dealing with different operating systems, but it's more on the minimal side. Doesn't happen as often. A good example would be when you're dealing with maybe some database drivers or things of that nature. That is where you could have, where if you're doing it to Windows and then you're going to deploy it to Linux, depends on the package, you would need to switch to some sort of a different binary package in order for it to work properly in Linux, as an example. But again, those are those little nuances that, overall don't occur that often. And then once you're aware of the little nuances, chances are you're probably going to address it going forward, so you don't have that issue. But overall, guys, like if I'm on a Windows machine, and let's say I've been coding on my Mac OS and I deployed code changes and so forth, and let's just say my computer goes down, right? It goes down, it's not working for a week. I could easily jump on my Linux or my Windows PC, clone the source code and do start coding right away with no issue at all. And it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing special about it, right? As long as you got the interpreter installed. Again, the majority of the packages are not going to be in conflict. You got some exceptions, but in general, you're not. So you'll be able to clone the project. You'll be able to install all of your packages, and just start coding like normal, just like the way you did before. And once you finish, you could push your code changes out to your repo, and you're good to go, man. Like, again, when I code in Windows, I don't feel like, I could code faster or slower than me coding in Linux or Mac OS. I just don't, man. All the applications that I use, I'm able to run on both Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. Like, I use PyCharm, I use VS Code as an example, Sublime Text, Python for the most part comes default on Linux. And it's a much later version as well too. It's not like a outdated version or anything like that. It comes with Mac OS, Windows. I could pick which version of Python I want to install. So and again, to install on Windows, dude, it is easy, man. Back in the day, it used to be a pain in the to install, but now it is not. It is very easy to install, very easy to get started. I have a video, so you're not familiar of that process, go check out my Python beginner course, and there's a video that I have on there, which is a getting started video that will walk you through that process. And again, I get that back in the day, I would say Microsoft had a bad rap, 15 years ago. The only really applications, the coding, I guess you could say, that people use Windows for was probably more like .NET, C# type stuff. But nowadays, Microsoft is not the same Microsoft as 20 years ago, man. I can tell you that right now. It is not. I'm not saying it's the perfect operating system. That's not what I mean. But there's a lot of things that they have been working on, a lot of things they have done differently. Even like with their SQL Server, you can install that on Linux now. It never used to be the case back in the day. Back in the day, it used to be strictly Windows Server. So there is a lot of changes, guys, that they have done. And I could tell you right now, I have coded JavaScript projects. I've coded Python projects, some C# projects. Those are really the main three. I have done a little bit of Ruby, but it was more playing around with it a couple of years ago. But I did all of that on Windows. And I can tell you right now, I really did not have any issue at all. Again, I would say Python back in the day was a little bit more pain in the butt to configure, to install. Now it's literally as simple as download, install. Dude, you're good to go. Like, it's really that straightforward, man. So, big difference than what it used to be. So that's why for me, when it comes to operating system, I don't see that being an issue. One thing I do want to point out, right? I would say operating system efficiency, without a doubt, for me, is going to be Mac OS first, Linux second, and Windows last, right? Now, in the same time, the reason why I really don't feel, even though Windows is last, which means from an efficiency, in my opinion, from an OS, the reason why I don't feel it as much, because all of my computers that I have, they're pretty beefy, put it that way. Like, I have one computer right here, which is my streaming computer, which has a 12900K for the CPU. Dude, that's pretty beefy. And it has a 3070 Ti. And then it has DDR5, 32 gigs of RAM. I have another PC over here, which is my Linux machine, that has 64 gigs of RAM, DDR4. It has I believe it has the 11700K, which is still, that's a good processor. And it has a GPU, but again, I don't use it. I don't use the GPU for anything specific. But again, that's pretty beefy. And then of course, for my Mac OS, I'm using the Mac Studio, which has 32 gigs. Their M1 Max CPU. And then of course it has like 26 GPU cores or something like that. But either way, man, like all of my PCs are pretty beefy, which is why I don't really feel like, any pain of it's running slow or anything of that nature. Everything's quick. But again, when you're dealing with a computer that's kind of slimmed down, 8 gigs or even 4 gigs, there's a big difference. Windows is slow on it. Does not feel efficient. But that's a different issue though, right? Like, even though Windows is slow or may not feel efficient, the question still is Windows good for coding? And again, the answer is yes. Everything that you could do on a Mac OS, with the exception of app development, keep that in mind. If you're going to be, coding, iPhone apps, like mobile apps and tablets and things of that nature, those apps, then you cannot use Windows. You are going to need the Mac OS system and Xcode installed to install Swift and do some coding, in that platform. But that's the exception. That's the only language that's an exception. Everything else, guys, whatever you could do in Windows, you can do on a Mac OS. It's just a preference of what you choose to do. And that's the way I see it. It is a preference. When people say, "Oh no, you cannot code in Windows," like I don't get where that comes from. When somebody says you cannot, I take it as like Swift development to create mobile apps. That in my mind is no, you cannot do it on Windows because you gotta do it on the Mac OS. That's a true statement of you cannot. Anything else, if you're coding in JavaScript or in Python or Java or Golang, you could do that in every language. I mean, in any operating system, whether it be Windows, whether it be Linux or Mac OS. So when people say, "Oh, you cannot," like, okay, guys, just because you have a preference and your preference is not Windows or Linux, like this notion of you cannot is stupid, man. I'm sorry. It makes the person saying it dumb, because it makes it seem like you're not educated enough. You're not. I'm putting it this way: you're either not experienced enough to know that what can or cannot be done in other operating systems besides Mac OS, which is number one. Or, I mean, and most likely it could be if the only operating system that you have ever used has been Mac OS, then that's a different statement, man. The statement should be, hey, in Mac OS, I'm able to do this, but I don't know about other operating systems. But again, guys, for me, I don't like that because it's giving a false statement of what's doable. It's almost making it seem like either are these people, and again, I'm talking about content creators as well. So I'm not talking about just people in general, but I have seen some content creators to make comments that, coding can only be done on a Mac OS. And that's all they say. Simple as that, coding. Code is very generic. Well, what language, right? If you're coding, you're doing mobile development in Swift, okay, I could lean on that and be like, all right, I agree with you. You need Mac OS if you're going to be developing apps, native apps for, iOS. I get that. I agree with that. I'm fine with that. But coding is very generic. Coding could be what language, what Python, JavaScript, C#, the list goes on, of all the tens and tens of languages out there. And if it's anything besides Swift, well, there's a very, very, very good chance that you can code in Windows and Linux with these operating systems, with these other languages. You just can, right? But again, if you don't know any better and you're telling people, again, content creators that are out there, you're telling people that they cannot use Windows to code and, to code in general, dude, that is so false. So false. And I'm speaking from somebody who has used Windows, Linux, and Mac. Even today, I have been using all three operating systems for the last, I don't know how many years. But today, right now, I use all three operating systems. I have in my house computer with all three operating systems, and I actually use them. I don't just have it, but I use all three. And I can tell you through first-hand experience, all of the coding that I have done, I could do on any machine. I could easily bounce from a Windows, go to Mac OS and Linux, and do the exact same thing. And I use the same applications: VS Code, PyCharm, Postman, if I'm doing some API testing. All of these these tools that I use, right, these applications, they all exist for all three operating systems. Simple as that. I use Git Bash for Windows because I do like the Linux terminal, the Bash pretty much. Then of course I use that on my Linux machine, and then with I don't have Bash on Mac OS, but nevertheless, though, the commands are pretty much the same. So I could easily navigate the terminal, the same on all three operating systems. So again, guys, I just don't understand. I just don't get that notion how when again, especially content creators, man. I'm getting on content creators here. So I'm not trying to bash the average viewer. I'm putting on blast content creators that come out and tell their viewers that Mac OS is only can be only used or is used for coding. Coders should only use Mac OS because that is dumb. That is not the case. Everybody doesn't have the money to spend on a MacBook Pro or anything like that, and you could use a laptop without that much hardware, and you could install Linux on it, and it will work, and you can code, and you could get things done and get started, and it's doable, man. Because I have done it before. I have used cheap laptops that I have had that are old, and what I do, I install Linux on it, and it runs like a charm. It runs smooth as butter with very little resources. So it is doable. Hey, we got Jay in the house. What's up, Jay? Let's see. What do you say? Yo, can you help me? I think I have a virus. You have a virus on your computer? Dude, if you have a virus, I don't think there's much I can do, man, to be honest with you. If you have a virus already on your computer, and I mean, in most cases, it's kind of done. Your best option would be to, I'm not sure what virus you have. You probably need to get some software to try to do a scan and see if it could try to remove it. So you said, I think, what makes you think that you have a virus, I guess? Like, what are you seeing? Is your system running slow? What's going on, I guess, with your computer? Did you download something? Did you open up an attachment and then your computer started acting funky, or what happened? Because there are some viruses, man, once they're installed, it's kind of hard to tell. They just run in the background. They're collecting data, right? Depends on what kind of virus it is. They're sending out data. A lot of the times you will need to look at the network traffic to see what data is being sent out and where is it going to, right? And then that's kind of where it becomes a little bit more of suspicious if you see like your network, a computer in your network is sending out data to like China, for example, or something crazy like that. Then that's how you know something's going on. And normally a lot of the time what you would do in those cases, like your average home will not have this, but if you have especially like in organizations, right? That's where they're able to track to see all of that traffic, and then they could block traffic to specific, like if they see if it's going to China, you could block all traffic going to China. So like that, it won't send nothing to there. So even if there is some kind of virus that's sending data out somewhere, your firewall could ultimately block that traffic and, not send data out. But by firewall, I don't mean like a system firewall. I mean more of a, like hardware. Like your, what is it called? Like ubiquitous, what is it called? Like Dream Machine, maybe? I'm trying to think of the right name. But, they have another one. What is the other one called? USG, I believe. So it's a piece of hardware, but ultimately you connect it to that piece of hardware. Your modem connects to this hardware. Then the hardware connects to your switch that ultimately connects all your computers. And then that's where you'll be able to, ultimately apply firewall rules, control traffic, be able to see activity as well. Where's data being transmitted to? Where's it going? Things of that nature. So I actually have one set up. You can't really see it. It's over here on this side. I have a server rack. Maybe you can see a little bit. There you go. You kind of see it slightly right here in the back. So I have my switch. Damn, how do I put, there it goes. So switch, the USG, that computer is connected to my NAS and another computer. Either way, but man, I'm having some issues with it, so I need to probably flash it, install probably do an update on it, and then it is a bit old though, so I don't know if that's the reason why I have an issue with it. Um, but either way, I may, if I don't get it to work, I may end up upgrading it anyways. Um, Something that's a little bit more powerful, has a little bit more power. So I'm still thinking about that. Hey guys, again, man, if y'all on the live streams, if there's anything that y'all guys need some help with, whether it be your code base, whether it be maybe y'all want to talk about a specific topic, whether it be AWS, because I do a lot of AWS stuff, whether it be Python, programming. I try to stick to Python. There's other languages as well, but for the most half, for now, I've been trying to keep the channel more focused on Python. Anything of that sense, guys, man, go ahead and let me know. I'd be more than happy to, we could look into it, right? That's kind of what we do in the live streams. We're already about to be 12. Normally for the between 9 and 10, we kind of talk a little bit about different topics, and of course, just finished talking about Windows. Is Windows good for coding? And again, short answer I mentioned is yes. My problem is with content creators, and again, I'm speaking to content creators that be pushing the notion that Mac OS is the only operating system you should be using for coding, which is BS, man. Because I have coded many projects on Mac OS, but also many projects on Windows and many projects on Linux. And I have also worked on projects where I'm literally bouncing around. When I'm traveling, so I take my MacBook Pro with me, which again Mac OS. Then whenever I came back to my house, because I have an office here in my house, I can finish my project in Linux. So it's like, dude, okay, you can easily bounce from one to another. And then I have used it because I have issues with my Linux computer, and I was using Windows as well to do some coding. So again, worked on one project, literally used all three operating systems, had no issues. It worked like a charm. It was very precise. Let's see. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna log in to AWS. Let's kind of go over some AWS stuff. So let me go ahead and log in real quick. Let's see. So one thing, I don't know if y'all have seen this before, guys. Maybe y'all have, but let's kind of talk about it. Lightcell. So this is something, it's been available to AWS for a while. It doesn't get talked about often. Let's get started. I'll create something later. That's fine. So here's the thing. And so like in AWS, you could create a EC2 instance, right? Ultimately, EC2 instance, if we go to it real quick, EC2 instance. So you could easily create a EC2 instance, and ultimately it's just a virtual server, right? You specify your hardware, just whether like how many CPU cores you want, based on whatever tier you get. You get X amount of RAM. If you want more RAM, you get some other tier, some other, so forth. But it varies because you could get something that very specific that's very good for CPU intense processing. You could get an instance that's very ideal for memory usage. You know, high memory. As an example, like there's so many different tiers for you to pick from, right? Depends on what it is that you want. Um, and it's not necessarily cheap, right? You know, depends on what you get. Sometimes it could be something where you pay. I don't know what their cheapest is, but um, probably I don't know. Like, where's the pricing at? I know there's a pricing section we could look at. There go pricing. Colin, hey, what's up, Colin? Your Python videos on Excel password removal was fantastic. Nice, man. Appreciate it. I'm using a paid service to crack the password. It's been running for 130 hours. No luck yet. Can you recommend a Python service instead? So are you trying to? I guess you're trying to crack to see what the Python password is. Is that what you're trying to do? I do have a video, I believe. Let's kind of check real quick. I know I need a. So I am working on a website for my channel. It's going to be called Coding with Lou, and ultimately I'm going to be taking my video that I have, and I'm going to be kind of organizing them a little bit better on my website to find certain videos. But if I go to my channel. Let's see. Let's look at videos. No, you lost your Excel password. Is your Excel password encrypted? Or is it just like I'm assuming, do you have the whole Excel password, the whole Excel file password protected, or is it just like a worksheet that's password protected? I'm gonna assume it's a whole file. So let's see. I'm not sure which video you saw, but. So like, for example, these right here, I think are more so, they're related to worksheet and workbook. I'm going to assume yours is probably the whole file is password protected is my guess. I'm trying to think. I thought I had a video related to that. I swear I did, man. Let me see. Oh, yes, the whole book. Let me see. I know maybe we talked about it in the live stream. So I'm trying to think. I thought I did a video related to that, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if I didn't. Maybe we talked about it in one of my live streams. Let's see. Okay, maybe this one. Let me try to think. All right, let's take a look at this one real quick. Over how to do I have a repo? I think I do. So have you looked at this video yet? I don't know if you have or you haven't. The Python brute force Excel password hack. So this video does go through that process. Yeah, this is where it's been encrypted. So this is where you cannot even open up the file, right? You're prompt to enter in your password. So ultimately what I'm doing here would be, so here's the thing. What I believe that's what I did here, right? Password text. Do I have that? There it goes, password text. How big is this file? 2000. So it's actually not that big. This is a smaller file. This is what I was using for testing. That's what it was. Not this one. Okay, so this video here, this one I do go into doing what's called a brute force attack on the Excel file, and it does, it will be more in line for what you're trying to do, where a file is password protected, right? Like the actual file itself, not the worksheet or the workbook, but the complete file. And so I do have in here a file of 5 million passwords. So if I were to go to my repo, where is it at? Here it goes. It's actually more, but see, there's a zip file in here. It may not show me no data now because I think it's kind of big. But there is, I believe there's a few files in here. There's a 10 million, 5 million, maybe like 2 million. But either way, you'll find a few files in there. 10 million being the biggest one. Pretty much it contains 10 million passwords in that file. And what it would do, it's actually going to iterate over using that file, that whatever file you specify, if you happen to specify the 10 million, row file. And yeah, if we take a look at it, it is going to, like, here's your password file. So specify whatever password, like if you use the 10 million one, specify it there. Of course, this is your Excel file that you're trying to brute force attack. And that should be it. You should be able to run it. And yeah, if it succeeds, it should print it out. And then it would quit. And ultimately, it should print out the actual password if it's able to find a match. So that's kind of what I did on the video. I showed an example. And in my case, the example is more so related to a smaller file, which is called password text, which again, it's like 2,000 rows in here. But again, in this zip file, there is like, I do have a few files in there. One of them is like 10 million passwords. So it is going to take a while. I would say that if you were to run it, and if you were to use a 10 million file password, I don't know how long it's going to take, but again, it all depends on when it finds it, right? If it's able to find it and, in the file, like in row, I don't know, 500,000 out of 10 million. Again, I would assume it would take, many hours. But again, if it's like row number 8 million out of 10 million, it could probably take days, who knows, maybe even longer. But it all depends, of course, on your hardware, what you have as well. But take a look at it, man. Take a look at this video here and see if this video helps out. Again, you'll find it, Python brute force Excel password. I could put it in the chat as well. So let me go ahead and put it in the chat if it allows me. Let's see. Why not allowing me to what? Oh, that's why. All right, let me try again. All right, so I just put it in the chat. That's the URL to the video. So yeah, man, take a look at that. See if that helps out. If it doesn't help out, um, yeah, man, we could look into it. You know, maybe next week or something, and see what are our options. But it's tough. Here's the thing: once it's encrypted, yeah, there's really no way, man. The only way to open it up back up is if you provide the right password. Without it, yeah, man, there's no workaround. Thanks. I will once again. You have pointed me to the right direction. Oh, no problem, man. No problem. So hopefully that helps out. And again, man, if it doesn't, we'll see what else we could do. But yeah, hopefully that should solve your issue. Hopefully, again, that file with 10-minute password helps out. Ideally, if it doesn't, the other option is probably need to find another file with a different list of passwords, and then see if any of those, hits. Or even yourself, man. If it's a password that you created yourself, I don't know if you just kind of remember, like maybe you kind of have in your mind, like, all right, I normally use 5 or 10 these specific passwords on different, applications or whatever. You could like write those 5 or 10 that you think potentially could be it, or who knows, maybe could be it. Throw them in the file, let the process run, and maybe one of those are hit as well. Or put different variations of it, right? With additional characters or whatever. But again, either way, hopefully that does solve your issue, man. What time is it? So it's about to be 10. So let's look at some AWS stuff. So yeah, we're talking about EC2 instances, right? It's pretty much they're just virtual servers, right? That's all it is. You're getting X amount of hardware with RAM, CPU, power, so forth. But they have a lot of different variations, different sizes. A little bit of RAM, very powerful CPU, or you could get a very minimal CPU but a lot of RAM, and so on, right? But there's also this one that was called Lightcell. Now this one, I always wonder, like, why did AWS create Lightcell? Right, because in reality, Lightcell, all it is a virtual server. But it's like, well, dude, they already provide a service for that, which is EC2. Like, why would they create another service for that? And the reason why I think they created Lightcell, against my opinion, is when you look at some of these other platforms, DigitalOcean, I don't know, like just some of these other web services. They make it very easy. A lot of people use some of these other ones to, let's say, deploy their WordPress app, like website, or deploy some kind of app real quick and things of that nature. I think that's where Amazon kind of got the idea, like, you know what? Let's build something that kind of mimics these other platforms. Because when you look at EC2, and again, I have spun up a lot of EC2 instances in my time. There's a little configuration, a little setup. I don't think it's hard, but I say that because I have worked with that many times. So for me, it's kind of easy now. Somebody who's new, who has not worked with it, it may seem a little bit more, complicated. Like, dude, there's a lot. Like, like you got to specify, determine your instance. A lot of the time, they're like, well, I don't know what instance I need. Or things of that nature. And then to remote in. Again, it just, to me, I don't think it's hard, but I do feel the way it's set up, the structure of it, it may not be as user-friendly, I guess. But then once you spin up your EC2 instance, right, let's say a Linux server or Windows, etc., then you got to configure it, right? You got to update it, update the operating system, the kernel, go ahead and install whatever application. Like if it's a Python app, you gotta install your remap. There's a lot of stuff you gotta do or whatever. Or you're trying to install WordPress on it. You gotta do that yourself. It doesn't come with it, and that's kind of where Lightcell becomes very beneficial, right? So we kind of walk through the process. Let's do create instance. You know what? Before I do that, let me make sure. Do I have anything in here? No, I do not. All right, cool. Just want to make sure that I did not have anything in here, which I don't. So again, when you click in here, you kind of pick, what do you want? Do you want Windows or do you want Linux? And let's say we're going to pick Linux, because in most cases, that's kind of going to be the operating system you're going to be dealing with. It's going to be Linux. See, from here, you could just go ahead and pick, well, do you want to do a WordPress, a Node.js project? So again, for people that are coming out of boot camps or things of that nature, you want to just spin it up. You don't really want to deal with the DevOps as much. You just want something to spin up and you could just connect and start using, right? That's kind of where you kind of specified, I want to work with Node.js or a mean stack, which again, this would be MongoDB, Express, Angular, Node.js, all that stuff, right? And all that stuff, even like the Let's Encrypt SSL certification are supported and configured, automatically. So all of that stuff, like on my servers, I got to configure that. I need to configure the SSL. I need to install Nginx. I need to go ahead and get my application to communicate with Nginx and Unicorn and all these other stuff. Like I have to configure it and put all that together. Where something like this, it kind of does that for you automatically out of the box. A lot of that stuff is kind of pre-configured already. You don't have to do it. All you need to do is spin it up and then push your source code over. Boom, you're good to go. So again, in my view, like, well, who benefits from this? When does this become handy? Because even that being said, even though it sounds so simple, I would say organizations in general, they don't really use this as much, right? Big companies are not using Lightcell. I can tell you that right now. They will spin up an EC2 instance. That's what they will end up using. Lightcell though does have a place. I will say where Lightcell comes in becomes very handy if you have a project you're trying to spin up, test out, and you don't want to deal with the DevOps, right? The configuration of it piece. This is where this comes in handy. Let's say if it's a Django app, right? In this case, Django and Python will be all included in this instance. As you could tell, what's included: Django, Python, SQLite, MySQL, Apache, Postgres, and more. So it has all of that already kind of built in. So you don't even have to deal with configuring or installing none of that. Now, again, you got your good and your bad. The bad thing of it is if you're dealing with an application that's very specific where I want this and this installed, like in my servers, I don't have Apache installed. I have Nginx. Now, I don't know if Nginx comes included in this, but I'm just kind of putting it out there. I use Nginx, not Apache, and this is using Apache. Now, as it does have MySQL, but I don't use MySQL. But again, it does have Postgres, which is fine because that's normally what I use on some projects, especially if it's like my internal projects or testing that I do. So it does have a lot of the stuff that I need, but you got to be careful though, because it has Django, but then it's like, well, what version of Django do they have? Do they have the version that you want to use? They may not. They may have a whole different version of Django, not even the version that you want. So that kind of sucks if that's the case. But again, it depends. If it does have what you need, you could do this. Now, you could tell the pricing is not bad. You could do so this one doesn't have there is a $3.50 instance, but it doesn't give you that option to pick it. So it must not be available. But the pricing is not expensive, man, when you think about it, right? $5 for 1 gig, 1 vCPU, 40 gigs of RAM. 40 gigs of SSD, and then 2 terabyte. Which again, it's more than enough. And it actually does have a few other options if you want a lot of, memory intense, or let's say processing. You want some more processors, or let's see, storage. These have more storage. And then transfer, you're gonna be dealing with a lot of in and out, inputs and outputs, in and outs. But again, in general though, easy to get started, $5 a month, which is very comparable to some of the other services that are out there. And again, this is more designed to be very just click and go, right? If you're creating a mean stack project, just click, run this. It's gonna have everything installed, everything configured, your SSL certification set up, all of that's good to go. Push your code, and then you're good to go, man. It's really that simple. Really that simple. Like even set up your updates, the level of main environment without having to manually install and configure. And that's where this comes in beneficial, man. If you're not a DevOps guy, you don't want to deal with it, especially if you're just dealing with your own personal project or maybe a little app, an app in general. And, maybe you have just a few hundred people a day at the most or something like that. You could easily spin something up here, get started in no time. As you could tell, some of these do have more resources. So by all means, you could run you could actually run an application out here without any issues. 4 GB, which is again your RAM, 8 GB, more than enough, with 2 vCPUs and a lot of SSD and terabyte of storage, all of that. So my bad, transfer rate. So storage is 160 gigs. I mean, you could do a lot with this. It just, for me, all of the stuff that I work on, I use EC2 Instance, and one of the main benefits why is when I need to upgrade resources, it becomes way easier on the EC2 instance. I could easily just specify I want to upgrade to another tier that maybe has 2 more vCPUs, and let's say I get 4 more gigs of RAM. So I'm able to literally upgrade in that manner by just clicking on the configuration, saving it, shutting down my VM, and when it reboots, it's going to reboot with more vCPUs and more RAM. Or I could even expand my storage. Maybe my storage is at 80 gigs. I could easily add 20 gigs, attach to it. I'm good to go. Like, you have more flexibility to do different things. Where with Lightcell, it's kind of more you're buying what you get. So if you were to start off with the cheapest option, see how this one, oh, there you go, that is available. $3.50 option, which is for half a gig, 1 vCPU. And let's just say 3 months later, you're like, damn, I need some more RAM. And you want to upgrade to at least 1 gig, right? Not that much more, $1.50 more. Upgrade just to get a full gig. You cannot just upgrade by saying, hey, upgrade it to another. It doesn't work that way. What happens is you literally have to now clone or make a snapshot of this system, save it, spin up a whole new instance, which is this, let's say this one, as this one spins up. So now you're going to have 2 VMs. Then now you're going to take the snapshot from the first one, go ahead and add it to the new instance that got created. And then, so you got to do all of that just to be able to upgrade. Where with EC2, it's literally the same instance, just specify I want to upgrade to this tier, add 20 more gigs of RAM, save, reboot, boom, you're good to go. So it just makes the upgradability aspect of it way easier, man. Way easier. And because it's more flexible, but it is going to cost you a little bit more. Keep that in mind. With EC2 Instance, you do have different types. For example, you have the on-demand, spot instance, saving, or dedicated. So you got options. You could specify to only, like, if you want a dedicated amount of resource and you're always going to have that no matter what, you could get a dedicated host. That means your resource is always going to be consistent, day in and day out. Whereas on demand, you're pretty much just paying on demand as you're using. Sometimes it kind of goes up and down on resources, just depends. I use on demand, and honestly, for the most half, I get pretty steady performance. I the server, like most of my servers, they're not the bare minimum. They're, a little bit more. They're kind of, I don't know, like maybe at least 8 gigs of RAM and so forth. But overall, I get pretty straight, pretty good performance. Then you have spot instance, and then of course saving plan, and so I do have saving plan as well, mine, where I know I have a server that I'm going to be using for potentially years to come, or at least for the next year. So I'd buy at a set price for the full year. So pretty much I'm buying at a discount, and ultimately to apply that discount for my instance that I'm using. So, but again, there's some benefits to this. It's very easy to get started. Um, Again, depends on what you're working on, whether it be a mean stack, WordPress site, Node.js, cPanel. This one doesn't require license, so that's interesting. They charge you for license as well. Interesting. Okay, but either way, Django and so forth, right? So there's a place for this. It just, in my case, really truly haven't had a need. I have played around with it, but um, like, kind of give an example. This is where I think this can work very well if you want to use it. You're gonna have a website. Spin it up. You're good to go. You don't need a lot of resources, and something pretty reasonable price, $5 a month, and you're good to go. But again, though, my issue is if I'm building, if I'm just deploying a website that I know my resources are pretty static, is not an issue. If you start getting a lot of traffic on your website, little resources, by all means, will probably kill it. So you would have to expand, and that's where it becomes more challenging to expand here. You literally have to clone, create a new instance, do all of that. I think it's a pain in the ass, man. That's just my opinion. But again, it does have its place. It just, for me, at least for the stuff that I do, I wouldn't use it. But I would use it for sure for especially doing testing and things of that nature. Now, the reason why I don't use it for my business for doing testing, because we do have an EC2 instance that's for development. Then we have an EC2 instance that's for production. Because again, as we deploy apps to production, we want to make sure that the dev environment matches production when it comes to resource and things of that nature. So, but nevertheless, if I would just be working on some sort of small project and I wanted to deploy it right away, you could do. That's interesting. I did not know they have SQL Server Express in here. Dude, that is kind of interesting, man. Do they charge for the license? Oh, so I was gonna say, so SQL Server Express. I'm trying to think. So I think they do have that. Let me go to RDS. I'm just curious now, man, how this compares. So if we look at database, let's look at create. You know what? No, not create. Let's look at pricing. So we look at pricing. Let's look at SQL Server. There you go, Express. So these are the different instances they have. They have a small, medium, large, extra large. Now, what does that mean, though, when it comes to resource size? Small. So let's see. Standard, nope, Express. There it goes. So reserve instance. No, I want to look at what the resource is in here. So like T3 small. What did that consist of? Because I don't think that's a lot of... Let's see over here, man. So SQL Server 2019, 2016. Let's look at 2019. So the starting price, so you can't even pick these. So it has to be 20. Is that right? Yep, cannot even pick those. So what about SQL Server 2016? Yep, so $20 is really the cheapest you could get it, which is 2 gigs, 1 vCPU, which is not a lot, man. I gotta say, the 60 gigs of RAM storage. So if we look at RDS instance, what is that? For SQL Server Express small, still, let me do the math on it. But I'm still trying to figure out what a small consists of when it comes to resource. So in this case, it would be 0.044 times 24. So it's $1.05 a day times, I don't know, 30 days. So that's $31. So just kind of looking at this is $31. But again, I'm trying to, I don't know where, what that represents though. But either way, so it's like $31. If we look at having this like configured, just working on its own, it's for $20, but it's for 2 gigs, 1 vCPU, 60 gigs of SSD. That's actually cheaper too, man. So it's kind of interesting, man. I wonder if it's cheaper than to use a light source for something like that. Let me see what this is, man. I'm very curious now what this represents. So let's see, what is it? This is T3 small. T3 small. So there it goes. It just says, oh my bad. So it says 2 vCPUs, right? So it's 2 with 2 gigs of RAM. Compared to this is 2 gigs of RAM, but it's only 1 vCPU. There we go. That's the main reason why. This, which is actually this here, right? See, one, no, my bad. That's 1 gig, 2 vCPUs. Yeah, so it's 2 vCPUs with 2 gigs of RAM. And here's the thing, this doesn't even say what it is either. Like, it could be T2, right? See how T2 we have 1 CPU and 2 gigs of RAM? I'm willing to bet that's what it's using for this. This is most likely probably running on a T2 micro. My bad, T2 small. Because it is 2 gigs of RAM with 1 vCPU. But it just happens to be running with, SQL Server Express, which again, SQL Server Express is free. You don't pay for that. That is the free. If we were to go SQL Server Express, where is it at? SQL Server Express. SQL Server Express is free, feature-rich editor SQL Server that are ideal for learning, developing, blah, 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 web and small server applications. Now, the free version is missing some features, right? But it's features that, in general, it will be okay if you don't have, right? Especially if you're just trying to work on the basics of databasing, which is, loading data, querying data, creating procedures, creating views, things of that nature. There's other features that come in very handy, like SQL Server Agent, things of that nature. Again, very powerful, very beneficial. But unless you have a use case, then there's no need. I mean, this would do. And again, but there are limitations, right? I don't know if it shows on here some of the limitations. Includes the SQL Server database engine only. Best suited to accept remote connections or, yep. So minimum requirements, half a gig. Let's see. I'm trying to see where the limitations are. SQL Server Express. Let's look at 2019. I'm not trying to download it. Let's look at the docs. All I was trying to see is, I don't remember what the limitations are. I don't know if it's like 10 gigs, 30 gigs, something like that. But there are some limitations to running SQL Server Express, right? So you get the database engine, but I believe the storage is limited. So let's look at limitations. What are they? So here we go. The Express. SQL Server Express is the entry-level free database and is ideal for learning, building desktop and small server data-driven applications. It is best choice for independent software vendors, developers, hobbyists, building clients. If you need more advanced database features, SQL Server Express can be seamlessly upgraded to other higher-end versions. Is lightweight version of Express, has all of its programmatical features running in user mode, and it has a fast zero configuration install. Still doesn't say what the limitations are here. Here goes scale limits. So we look at Express limited to lesser of one socket or 4 cores. Where of course these other ones, 24 cores, 16 cores, so on. Enterprise, the core that's all of your cores that exist on your system. So there is a limit on cores, which again, 4 cores is not bad, especially if you're working on local projects. That's more than enough. Memory. So in this case, what is this? 1.5 gigs. A max memory for buffing. So yeah, 1.5 gigs pretty much. Max memory for column store. Dude, this is very minimal for sure. So you'll see some limitations there. And what's the other one? There it goes. This was the one I was looking for. So maximum relational database side. All of these are pretty high, man. You could tell, right? So these are pretty, very, very high numbers. But this is where, this is not that much. I mean, here's the thing. 10 gigs, if you're building a crude application, especially if it's for your house or something like that, this is more than enough. More than enough. If you're going to be loading millions and millions of records and be processing heavy transaction, a lot of heavy processing, this is not going to work. You're going to run out of space. Put it that way. I have a SQL Server right now that I use for production, and I can tell you right now, I am using probably about 200 gigs, and I have a few tables. There's a lot of tables in this database, but I have a few tables that are, they're in the millions of rows. One of them probably like, I don't know, 80 million or more. Then I got another one at 50 million and whatever. Again, those are not crazy numbers and everything runs smoothly, but just I'm trying to kind of give you an example where 50 million here, 80 million here, 30 million here, whatever. Once you start adding all that up, dude, I'm already using like over around 200 gigs of storage. So, yeah, 10 gigs, of course, it's nothing, man. But it works for small projects without a doubt, right? So for that, it does work. And they give you like your basics, right? Database snapshots, kind of cover, recovery. So overall, man, I mean, it's ideal. So here's the thing with SQL Server. Like the thing with SQL that makes it, I think, beneficial to learn is a lot of enterprise or companies out there, they're most likely are using SQL Server or Oracle are like the two main data. There are other ones by all means, but those are, I do feel like, some of the big ones. I know for me, as I have in my past bounced around from one company to another company, um, one company, they use SQL Server. I think it was SQL Server 2008 because this was a while back. And then when I went to the next company I worked for, they used SQL Server 2008 R2. And then they eventually upgraded a 2012, but they didn't use that as much. So the two database, and then I think right before I left, there was some stuff being developed in Redshift, but they still had SQL Server R2. I think like one database that was 2012, and then they were doing some development for data warehousing in Redshift. But by then I kind of left. The next company I went to, they had many databases, and the majority of them, like almost all of them, it was in Oracle, and it was different versions of Oracle too. So there were some pain points with that, switching from one system to another, and then you realize that it's a whole older version of Oracle than this other one, and either way, but it was Oracle. But they did have one database that was a SQL Server that almost nobody even knew how to use because everybody was so used to dealing with Oracle, and for them they kind of struggled. But it was kind of odd because I came from a SQL Server background, and I was like, dude, it's a piece of cake for me because I dealt with it for so long. But it's not that big of that difference, right, man? They're all similar. Oracle, MySQL Server, Postgres, MySQL. Dude, the majority of the syntax is very similar, man. Very, very similar. So, not sure what the issue was with that. But either way, man, again, that I'm just kind of giving you my experience as I have worked for 3 other companies in the past. I work for myself now, of course, but before that, the 3 companies that I worked for, it was SQL Server, and then Oracle. And then of course one of them they started development in Redshift, which I know how to do Redshift as well. And again, Redshift to kind of keep it simple, Redshift is pretty much, I want to say pretty much almost to the T identical as Postgres. So you're familiar with Postgres, Redshift is going to be a piece of cake, guys. Put it that way, a piece of cake. Let's see. All right, so it's already about to be 10:30. All right, guys. Let me know, guys. I'm gonna call it a night. Unless y'all have anything, if there's anything that you want me to review, if you want me to review your code, if you have an issue, by all means, let me know. Be more than happy to it, man. That's kind of what we do in the live streams. We try to solve problems. At least I try to, anyways. You can email me as well at contact@iamlou.net. If you have any issues, you could book some time with me. Go look at my calendar, book some time with me. I'd be more than happy to try to help you out as well, guys, with that. So I'm trying to help out, guys, on whatever way I can. That's kind of the whole purpose with the YouTube channel. Man, I want to provide some value, right? I want to be able to try to help out, at least share the knowledge that I have, and maybe it's beneficial to y'all. or somebody out there. And again, man, the channel's starting to grow a little bit. It's growing slowly, but it's going up, man. It's going up, and that's a good thing, right? So, got some goals with the channel. Hopefully, we could try to hit these goals. My goal is by the end of the year to be at 10K subscribers right here on YouTube. Right now, what are we? We're at like 2,200, maybe around there, 2,300, somewhere around there. So we're about a quarter way in already, right? So 25% down, 75% more to go. So it's doable. I think it's doable, but again, it's going to take some effort. It's going to take some time. Got to be patient, you know. But besides that, guys, that's not the main purpose, guys. I mean, main purpose is try to help you all out. You know, as you have issues, I can't solve all the problems. I wish I could, but I'll try to solve what I can. You know, let me know what issues you have. Let me know your requests. I'll be more than happy to provide you some assistance. Again, look at my calendar, guys. If you want, be more than happy to spend some one-on-one time with you. If you're new to development, if you want to learn programming, again, guys, you could book some time with me as well. Be more than happy to give you some insight, some teaching, some guidance, better yet, and hopefully that'll help you out, man, as you learn Python. If you wanna, get into this field. But again, guys, man, I do appreciate it for joining the live stream, and see y'all next week, guys.